Hi everyone, welcome to the OklaRoots YouTube channel. Today's video is the third grocery tote video. Wow, yeah. So one of my most popular videos by far on this channel is my original grocery tote video. Full disclaimer, I did not write that pattern. That is a blog post pattern written by Pearl Soho. I will have a link down below. I suggest you go check it out. They have a lot of different variations and it's a very well written pattern. When I first started sewing bags, I wanted to find an easy tote that didn't have any hardware, something that I could accomplish as a new bag sewer. I found that blog post and it has become one of my favorite bags to make. Everybody I know has them now. And from all the comments and emails and pictures I've seen, it is a very popular bag to make in the sewing community, especially good for beginners. However, I get requests for alterations to that bag every single day. So today we're going to go over one of the most popular requests, which was to minimize the size for our little shopping buddies. So here is the mini grocery tote. Originally, I designed this for our little buds who come with us to go grocery shopping. However, when I showed this on social media, I had a few people reach out to me and say this was the exact size they were looking for things like CVS run, drugstore run, something where they just have to buy a couple small things. They don't need the big bag, but they also don't want to get a plastic bag. This is the perfect size for that. Actually, my beautiful and wonderful Nana took one of these bags, and I'll have a picture right here. She took one of these bags to a doctor's appointment where she had to bring all of her medication. Now, she didn't want to bring a big bag to put it all in, and she didn't want to put it in her purse. This was the perfect size bag for that trip. So let's go over the bag. So a few of the changes we made this time is that we did include an exterior pocket. This is just a nice little slip pocket. Again, we have that contrasting strip on the top, except this time this contrasting strip is not canvas. This is actually cotton lycra, which is like a jersey legging type material that I interfaced with Woven Fuse 2, which I get from gotinterfacing.com. I will have a link for it down below, and we're going to discuss interfacing later in this video. So one of my absolute favorite changes I made in this bag is the material for the lining. This time, we're using waterproof canvas for the lining. Waterproof canvas is thin, but dense. It's very sturdy. So you can see when I hold my bag, it doesn't flop down, it doesn't fold over. I can even put the straps down and it still stays up perfectly taut. Now, if you're looking for a bag that you can fold up a whole bunch of these into a small space, this is obviously not going to be that bag. It's not going to fold into a really tiny ball. However, if you have a lot of the larger grocery totes that you can roll up, this would be a great bag to have in your car and have them all rolled up in, and it will just hold them all together so they're not like all over the floor of your car like they are in my car right now. So you can see the waterproof canvas is just lining there. I also use the waterproof canvas for the straps, and I am a huge fan of these straps. In the original pattern, we use this cotton webbing, and this cotton webbing is great, but it is pretty thick, and when we start kind of layering it up a whole bunch with all the layers of fabric, it was getting a little difficult to go over on our sewing machines. So a lot of you were asking for alternative straps. Hands down, my favorite straps are these waterproof canvas straps. They don't require any interfacing, they're not very thick, and my machine handles it very well. I believe your machine would be good with it also. If you don't have waterproof canvas, it's totally fine. You can substitute quilt cotton that is interfaced with woven interfacing. Again, we're going to talk a lot more about interfacing in the next part of this video. And the last modification we made to this bag was including just a little hoop on the inside. Now, this was requested for the larger bags because when you're taking it to the grocery store and you're putting it on the rack, you can hoop it onto the rack like that and keep it open while you do your groceries. Since this is a smaller bag, you're probably not going to have to do that with this one, but you can use this same hoop on the larger bags. So this is what we're going over today. This is a great, great bag for the younger people in your life. This is a great bag for you to use for those small errands you have to run. I know at the time of this video, we're getting close to Easter. This would be a great, great bag for those Easter egg hunts. And it's a fantastic pattern for you to alter and build on in all kinds of different ways. You could add foam to this. You could change the materials for the top and the bottom. You could add a zipper, add magnetic snap. You can do so much with this basic design. So what I'm actually using this top little hoop for is to hook on this hand sanitizer holder that has a little lobster clasp and I just hooked it onto that hoop so that way I have my hand sanitizer in my little bag at all times. For those of you that I know are gonna ask, this hand sanitizer holder was made on my embroidery machine. It was done very, very easy. If you have an embroidery machine or you're interested in buying one, I suggest you go check out Crashing Waves. They are on Facebook, they have a website, I'll have links for everything down below. Tiffany designs this stuff, and she does such a good job at creating these beautiful little holders that you just put your hand sanitizer in, and just like that, and you can clip it on anything. These are very, very popular in my home. So if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please consider clicking subscribe down below. If at any point you like this video, please give it a like. Any questions, comments, shout outs, anything you want to say, you can leave them in the comment section down below. Don't forget that the very first comment at the top of the comment section will be by me, and it will have timestamps for every single part of this video. So if you're working on this later and you just need to remember how to do the straps, go down to the straps, click on the number that it has next to it, and it will take you straight there in the video. All right, let's get started. So for this bag, I am using 3 different fabrics and 1 interfacing. For the bottom of the exterior, I'm using this duck cloth canvas. I get this from Hobby Lobby or Joann's. It's pretty easy to find and it's pretty inexpensive. Today, for the top contrasting strap, I will be using quilt cotton. I will also be using this for the exterior pocket and the hoop on the inside of the bag. For the lining and straps, I will be using this waterproof canvas. I buy this off of Amazon. There are a lot of places you can find this, but I will have the Amazon link for this down in the description below. And the interface that I'm using today is actually this thing called Woven Fuse 2. Now, this is a woven interfacing, so you can use Pellon SF101. You can use the original Woven Fuse. This Woven Fuse 2 has a bit of a crisper finish, and I really, really like that. However, you don't have to use this version. You can get away with any woven interfacing and be fine. If you're using a canvas for the top accent of your bag, you do not need to interface that. You do not need to interface the lining. The woven interfacing is used on anything that is cotton lycra or quilt cotton. This is just to prevent stretch and to provide additional support to the fabric. In the bag I'm using today, I will be using a fat quarter of the exterior bottom, a fat quarter for the exterior contrasting top and the pocket and loop, 1 yard of the waterproof canvas for the lining and straps, and a fat quarter of the woven interfacing. From the quilt cotton, which will be used as my contrast, I'm going to have 2 strips for the top contrasting exterior panels. These are both cut at 14.5 inches by 5 inches. If these are quilt cotton or cotton lycra, they need to be interfaced with a woven interfacing. I will be interfacing them with Woven Fuse 2, and I will show you how I do that in the next step. You're also going to need a cut of fabric that is 5 inches by 8 inches. This also needs to be interfaced with the woven interfacing. This will be used for the pocket. And you'll need a cut of fabric that is 5.25 inches by 2 inches. Interfacing is optional on this piece. I have interfaced mine today. This will be used for the little loop on the inside of the bag. You could also use vinyl for this. If you use vinyl, I suggest cutting the width of it in half, so make this 5.25 inches by 1 inches, and then just fold it in half when you're attaching it to the bag. The exterior bottom is a piece of duck cloth canvas material. This is going to be 14.5 inches by 18 inches. You only need 1 cut of this, and this does not need to be interfaced. For my lining, I have a cut of waterproof canvas that is 14.5 inches by 23 inches. I'll be using the same material for the straps. These are both cut at 5.25 inches wide by 24 inches long. So before we get started, I just want to show you the difference in sizes in these bags. You can easily adjust the height of the bag by adjusting the bottom canvas and the lining. You can see this is the first miniature bag I made, and I did this during a live. I'll have a link for that on the screen up in one of the corners. And this bag is about 2 inches shorter than the larger bag, so you have a lot of wiggle room here. The relationship between the exterior bottom panel and your lining is a difference of about 5 inches. So your lining panel in your bag needs to be 5 inches taller than the base of your exterior. As long as you remember that, you can adjust this however you want. So for example, in today's pattern, the exterior bottom panel is 18 inches tall. The lining is going to be 23 inches tall. The lining is 5 inches taller than the base. If you wanted to make it shorter, let's say you want to make it smaller, you can go with an exterior base that is 16 inches tall and a lining that is 21 inches tall. So as long as you understand the difference is 5 inches, You can adjust the height of this however you want. I would be cautious in adjusting the width because we do want enough space between the straps and enough space between those straps and the French seams to avoid bulk and to still make it usable. So personally, I would not adjust the width any smaller. You could make it wider, and you can adjust the height of it using the formula I just gave you. So while we wait for the iron to heat up, let's just quickly talk about interfacing. Over here on the left is the original woven fuse. This is very similar to the Pellon Shape Flex, the SF101. It does melt quicker and adheres better in my opinion. I do prefer the woven fuse over the SF101. Over on the right, we have the woven fuse 2. Now it's very similar to the woven fuse. It's still a woven backing. However, the glue is a little bit different. I don't know if you can see. This doesn't have a sandy feel to it. It's just very shiny. And what it does is it has a bit of a crisper finish instead of a more drapey finish. So they're both great options, especially for this bag. If you're using the waterproof lining, neither one of these is going to make much of a difference. But for straps especially, the woven fuse 2 is great. It keeps the straps nice and crisp and not too drapey. I did try 2 other strap options when building this bag. This pink one right here was interfaced with Decoville Light. I do not suggest using that in these bags. It is just way too dense, way too firm. You can see it's like a piece of leather, which is really nice, but because we have to double up on our straps, it could be a little bit much for machines. If you have a very powerful sewing machine, this could be a great option. And I do think this is a fantastic option for bags when you don't have a whole lot of layers and you don't have to double it up too much. This blue strap here is actually a strap that is cotton lycra and interfaced with the woven fuse 2. Even though cotton lycra is kind of a light drapey fabric, it's very thick, and I found that my machine just could not get through all these layers in the bag. So I wouldn't suggest using cotton lycra for your straps. I do suggest that your straps are either quilt cotton, interfaced with a woven interfacing, or waterproof canvas. So just since this is the first time we're using the woven fuse 2 on the channel, I just wanted to show you how it acts. I do suggest cutting out your woven fuse to the desired shape before you fuse it onto your quilt cotton. And I like to fuse the quilt cotton on top and fuse it down like that. I find that the glue melts much faster versus fusing it with the back of the woven fuse 2 up. So make sure you have your shiny side up, and depending on your lighting, it can be kind of hard to tell which side is your shiny side. So just double check your shiny side is up, and then just lay your material over the top of it, just like that. And then I like to just start in the middle and gently just press for a few seconds and then move it over to each side. You can use steam with this. Steam does speed up the process. Once I have the middle pressed, I just like to go over the edges just to make sure that those don't come apart while I'm kind of twisting it around at the sewing machine. All right, and that is how you interface the woven fuse 2. You can see that it's a little drapey, but it does have a very crisp feel to it, which I really like. So let's first build these straps. Waterproof canvas can be pressed, but it doesn't hold a press very well. So instead of pressing these straps before sewing, I'm just gonna fold them and clip them in place. Grab one of your straps and a ruler, and you're gonna mark a line down the long end that is 2 5/8 from the side. Hey guys, it's Future Jess here. Just wanted to let you know that at the time of filming this video, I didn't actually know which side of the waterproof canvas was the right side and which side was the wrong side. I have since been corrected. However, in this video, I am using it backwards. So the wrong side of waterproof canvas is that coated side, and the right side is that fabric side. I had it backwards in the video. I just want to let you know that if you do make the same mistake that I do not worry. I have 2 of these adorable bags made with waterproof canvas, wrong side out on the straps and the lining, and they have held up super great. They have taken a beating and they're doing great. So if I'm able to catch you before you start making it, the right side is the fabricy side, the wrong side is the coated side. If you make the same mistake that I do, don't worry, you're good. All right, Jess, you're doing a great job. My marking tool today is this air erasing sew line marker. I haven't tested out erasing it. I haven't had a need to erase it yet, but it does write really nicely. And now all you have to do is take your long raw edges and fold them up to meet that middle line. If you're using a quilt cotton here that's interfaced with woven interfacing, you can just press this in place. You don't even have to clip it. Once you have one side clipped, go ahead and do the same for the other. And once you have both ends clipped, all you have to do is fold the entire unit in on itself so that all raw edges are hidden, and you can just include both of the folded edges in the clips. All right, and go ahead and repeat this process for your other strap. Now let's take both of these straps to the sewing machine and we're gonna top stitch along both long edges at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So today I'm sewing on my Juki TL 2010Q. I am using 40 weight Aurifil cotton thread, and I have a universal 9014 needle. Okay, you can take your straps and put those to the side. Now let's build our pocket. Now our pocket is going to actually lay like this. When it's finished, it'll be folded in half, laying with the 5-inch side on top and the 4-inch sides on the side. If you have a logo that you like to sew on, now's the time to attach it. To figure out the placement for your logo, you can just fold your pocket piece in half so that the shorter ends are touching, and then just kind of eyeball where you want it to go. If you want it centered or not. I'm going to have mine centered, so I'm just going to unfold it, and then I'm just going to put a couple pins in it just like that. And now we can just sew this logo on at the sewing machine. Now we have the logo in place. For those wondering, I get my logos from inked papers on Etsy. Check the description down below. I have a discount code for you if you buy from them. Now that we have the pocket ready to go, take your pocket and line up the short ends right sides together and just clip in place. Now mark yourself a 3-inch opening on the top unfolded edge right there. And we're going to take this to the sewing machine and sew this on at a 1/4 inch seam allowance from the folded edge up to that mark, and then from the next mark over to the folded edge, leaving an opening right in the middle on the top. All right, once you have this done, you can go ahead and clip those corners. Now take your pocket and fold it right side out. And just do your best to poke out those corners as neatly as possible. You can use a chopstick. I have this handy dandy That Purple thing, which I use to poke out my corners. All right, once you have it all turned out, just stick your fingers in the edges of that opening and just give it a little tug. You should notice that the flaps want to just fold down on that 1/4 inch seam. So just do your best to kind of manipulate it and fold it down. You can clip it for now. And then we're going to give this whole pocket just a quick press to try to make it as rectangular as possible. My pockets always end up being just a little wavy, and that's okay. Make sure you have those edges folded down. If you interfaced with Woven Fuse 2, it does provide a very nice crease, so it makes it much easier to hold it all together. Just give it a good press. Right, I'm just going to reclip that opening to keep it together. Now that your pocket is all pressed, we're just going to top stitch along the very top of our pocket where we have that opening, just to close it up. Now grab your rectangle for the loop, and we're just going to double fold this similar to the straps. Since I'm not using waterproof canvas and I'm using a quilt cotton, I can just use my iron to hold this. I don't have to draw anything. So take your longer edges and fold those wrong sides together and press along that folded edge. Go ahead and open it up. Take those raw long edges and fold them up to meet that center press. And then you can just take the whole unit and fold it so that the two folded edges are meeting just like that, and clip in place. Now we're going to take our little hook and we're going to top stitch along both long edges at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, once you have your loop done, you can go ahead and put that to the side with your pocket. Now we're going to build the exterior panel. Take your bottom panel and lay it so that the short edges are at the top and the bottom of your cutting mat. Grab one of your contrasting panels and lay it right side up with your bottom fabric right side up as well. You're going to lay it how you want it to look in the end. So once you have it the way you want it, fold it down right sides together with that bottom canvas piece, and line them up along that 14.5-inch edge and just clip together. We're going to repeat this for the other side. So grab the other side of your canvas piece, right side up, grab your other contrasting fabric, right side up, lay them out how you like them, and then turn them right sides together and lined up on that long edge. I like to clip the sides in place as well. Depending on the pressure on your pressure foot, it does have a tendency to kind of push the fabric around a little bit. So by clipping the sides, it helps me keep everything in one place. All right, now we're going to take this to the sewing machine and we're going to sew along both of these edges at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. All right, once you have the contrasting panels attached, we're gonna just press them open. So lay your unit with your contrasting panel wrong side up, and we're just gonna fold that up just like that. We wanna make sure the seam stays behind the contrasting panel. So press this together. Again, making sure that seam is behind the top unit, not behind the canvas. So let's do the same for the other side. Just press it up. Keeping that seam behind the top contrasting panel. We want that because we're going to top stitch this and we're going to top stitch on the contrasting panel. So we want to make sure we get that seam in our top stitching. Okay, now we can take this to the sewing machine and we can just top stitch along this edge on the contrasting panel at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Once you have this all top stitched, now we're going to work on pressing down the top unit of our outer panel. So take your outer panel and lay it right side down. And one of the first commenters ever on my videos gave me this tip, and I've been using it ever since. I've seen a lot of you use the same tip or offer the same tip multiple times. I'm super appreciative of every bit of advice you guys give. So what we want to do right now is we want to fold down this top raw edge of our contrasting fabric. We want to fold it down 1/2 of an inch. To help us do that, we're going to take a long ruler and we're going to mark a 1-inch line from that top edge. And now all we have to do is take that raw edge and fold it down to meet that 1-inch mark, and then we have a perfect 1/2 inch fold. So just do this along the entire raw edge, just like that. So now we want to fold this folded edge down 1/2 of an inch. So using the same technique, we're going to mark a line that's double that, so 3 inches down from the top folded edge, not the raw edge, but the folded edge, just like that. And now we're going to take this folded edge and we're going to fold it down to meet our marked line and press. Now you can go ahead and add a couple clips here just to hold it in place. We'll be working with this flap a lot more in the next step. Go ahead and repeat this process for the other side. Once you have these flaps pressed, go ahead and turn your outer panel so that it's right side up. So it should look something like this now. Now we're going to add our pocket. What I like to do is first find the midpoint. So I take my outer panel unit and I fold it in half so that I can find the midpoint of the shorter edge. Then I just take a pin and I just stick a pin in that fold, just like that. So now I know where my pin is my midpoint. So now take your pocket and you're gonna do the same. You're gonna fold it in half along the top edge and grab a pin and just pin in that fold. There we go. Now take your ruler and line up your 3-inch mark with that top folded edge of your outer panel. And I like to just pick any of these vertical grid marks and line that up with my pin. It just makes it easier to line up my pocket. So for me, that's the 14-inch mark. And then take your pocket and line up the pin on your pocket with that same vertical mark, and then just line it up against the ruler, just like that. Now I like to take a few kind of more heavy duty pins here, and then just pin the pocket down so that it doesn't move around before I get it to the sewing machine. There we go. You can go ahead and remove your midpoint pins for now. Now we're gonna take this to the sewing machine and we're gonna sew along the edges and the bottom. So your top stitch top, or whichever side you're using as your top, maybe your folded edge is gonna be the top. Your top is not going to be top stitched down, just the sides and the bottom. Make sure you back stitch really well at the beginning and the end. Before I pivot, I give it a back stitch, maybe like 2 stitches, and then back down to that corner. And then I pivot. And then I give it another back stitch at this corner before I keep going. This just helps add a little bit more enforcement to those corners to make the pocket last a little bit longer. I'm going to do the same with the other corner here. All the way over. And then back stitch a couple stitches. And then pivot. And then right away do a couple stitches forward and then back stitch a couple stitches. All right, now you have your pocket attached. If you unclipped the top to work on the pocket, just go ahead and add a couple more clips. We're gonna return back to this. Now, before we put all the pieces together, I want you to decide which edge is going to have the loop. So remember, when your bag is upright, you'll have the pocket on one side and you'll have a loop. I think I'm gonna have my loop on the opposite side of the pocket. So I know this side of my bag here that does not have the pocket is going to have the loop. I'm gonna work on that side first. So just like we did before, we wanna find the midpoint of this folded edge. Go ahead and fold it and then add a pin in that fold. There we go. Now lay your unit so that the bag is wrong sides up and we have access to this fold. First, let's add the lining. So grab your lining panel and lay it right side up. And all we have to do is open up this fold and include the lining panel up to the fold, just like that. There we go. And then just fold your fabric back over the lining panel and clip in place. Now we're going to add the straps. So grab a ruler and we are going to lay our straps 3 inches away from our center marking. So what I do is I just line up the 3-inch mark on my ruler with my pin and make sure that my ruler is flush against that folded edge at the top of my bag. Then grab one of your straps and take one of the raw edges and just tuck it up underneath that folded fabric right against the edge of the ruler so that it's 3 inches away. Give it a clip for now. Now make sure your strap is totally straight. You don't want a twisted strap. So straighten out your strap and then take the other raw edge and insert this right on the outer edge, so right outside or to the right of the 6-inch mark on your ruler. So again, these straps are 3 inches away from the center point. Now you can center your strap on this 0 point and the 6-inch mark, that's fine. I do like a full 6 inches in between the straps. I feel like that's a really good width between the straps for shoulders. All right, once you have your straps pinned in, now we're gonna fold them up. So working with the left strap first, I'm just gonna fold it right along that bottom fold of my grocery tote and then just fold it up just like that and include it in the clip. And I'm going to add 2 clips to hold the strap in place. So this should be what it looks like. We're gonna do the same thing with the right side. It's held down, fold it up, and then just include it in that clip. There you go. So for the loop, we're going to add it again centered around that midpoint mark. And I like to add the loop so that it's about 1/2 inch from either side of the midpoint mark, meaning there's an inch between the edges. So just like the straps, I'm going to take the raw edge of my loop and I'm going to tuck it in right on the edge of my ruler and just clip that in place. The pin is lined up with the 1/2 mark on my ruler. Now I actually don't keep this flap straight. I like a fold to it. I feel like it makes it easier to work with. So I have my loop flat down like this. I'm just gonna fold it up like a V, and then I'm just gonna attach it close to the 1-inch mark. You can make this wider or shorter. You can do a lot of different things with this little attachment right here. So don't get too worried about the placement of this loop. As long as it's centered for the most part, you're fine. There we go. Okay, now we can remove that center pin. Now we're gonna go to the sewing machine and we're gonna sew along both edges of this folded fold over at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I like to sew this on with the lining side up, and I always start on the bottom edge of that fold first. Go nice and slow when you're going over these straps. I like to backstitch over them as well, especially on the edges. If you find these straps are very thick and you have a difficult time going down on your sewing machine, you can buy something called a hump jumper. I'm just using the small ruler, and what I do is very, very carefully, I lay it so that it stays at the front of my presser foot. It doesn't go under my needle. And all this does is help keep the front of my presser foot at the same height as the back of my presser foot until the back overcomes that hump from the strap. So once it overcomes that hump, I can move this out of the way and continue on. That just helps prevent those really wide stitches from happening around your straps. So just as an extra tip, if you're not happy with all of the stitching, let's say you have some spaces that are just driving you crazy, what I've done many times with these bags is I will go over this exact same line of stitching a second time, but I will go over it from the opposite direction. So let's just do that. So I'm going to take my bag, and this time I'm going to turn it so that I'm stitching in the opposite direction. And I'm just going to be super careful and make sure I go over those exact stitches. So you can see that this line right here is the one I went over with twice. As long as you're very careful about staying on top of the same stitches, it's not noticeable. It just looks like a thicker threaded line. So now we're going to do the same thing, stitching a 1/4 inch seam allowance along the very top folded edge. Once again, I'm going to double up these stitches, but this time I'm going to do it from the front of the bag so I have a better view of what it's going to look like on the outside. So there you go, one of your straps is all attached. Now let's finish the other side. At this point, what I like to do is I like to lay out my lining nice and flat and see where it lines up with this fold. Oftentimes it is just a hair too big. So if that's the case, you can trim it down or you can leave it to be a little bit baggier on the inside. It's not the end of the world, but it is nice when it lines up perfectly with that fold. So what I do is I find where the fold is on my fabric and I just mark my lining where that folded edge is, just like that. It doesn't have to be perfect. Now I'm gonna do the same on the top, find where the fold is and just mark my lining just like that. All right, so move your exterior out of the way so you have just your lining panel on your cutting mat. Grab a long ruler and line it up with the bottom and the top marks on your lining panel that you just marked. And then just take your rotary cutter and cut along that line. All right, so once again, lay out both panels and then just tuck your lining in that fold. The lining panel should come exactly where you want it now. There you go. So now we can just fold down that top exterior edge and clip in place. And then we'll work on adding the straps to this side. So once again, I have my panel so that the exterior is right side down. I have the lining right side up and I'm working on my fold. I'm going to take this and fold it in half along that shorter edge again to find my midpoint. And then I'm just gonna pin that midpoint like that. All right, on this edge, I'm only adding the straps. So I'm gonna line up my ruler so that the 3-inch mark is at the same spot as my pin and my ruler is lined up flush with the edge of my bag. Go ahead and grab your strap and tuck the raw edges up in that fold, lining up
the innermost edge with the 0 mark on your ruler. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect, and just pin that in place. Make sure your strap is nice and straight before you line this up so that the innermost edge of this strap is right up against the 6-inch mark. So again, that gives us a nice 6-inch separation between the edges of the strap. Go ahead and pin that in place. You can remove your midpoint pin. Now we're just going to fold up these straps, fold it over that bottom folded edge all the way up, and include that in your pins. Do the same with the other side, fold it up and include it. All right, now we're going to go to the sewing machine and once again sew along both of these edges at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. All right, now that you have the straps attached, the hardest part is done. Now we just have to sew up the sides and box the bottoms and you are done with your bag. So take your bag and lay it lining sides together. So we want exteriors right side out. Line up the top corners and just pin along the side. Try to keep everything as together as possible. If you have a lot of shifting with your fabric, just do your best to kind of get it all lined up neatly. We have some pretty big seam allowances here, so everything's going to be tucked in, but it's good if we can keep this together as best as possible. So there's one side, go ahead and line up the other side as well. All right, once you have your sides pinned, we're going to sew along both sides at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So once the sides are sewn on, go ahead and flip your bag so that it is lining side out. If you haven't worked with waterproof canvas before, you might notice that it is a little bit stiffer and a little bit harder when turning in and out. It's not a big problem in this bag since it's a good size. Just poke out those corners really well. Now do your best to kind of run your hand inside and push out along that seam as best you can. We don't want this to be all wavy. Now what I like to do is just clip along the edge. I kind of push out from the bottom with my fingers and then just clip it to keep this as nice and straight as possible. All right, go ahead and do that for the other side as well. Once you have your French seam done, go ahead and flip your pouch so that it's right side out. Now, if you're not interested in boxing your corners, then you're totally done. This is a great little pouch, but I'm going to continue on with the tutorial and show you how to box those corners. So turn your bag, and what we want to do is we want to separate the front and the back panels so that our seam is running right down the middle. So it should look just like this, with the front of the bag and the back of the bag on opposite sides and the center seam running straight down the middle. Just flatten it out as best you can, poking out that corner. You'll probably have the opposite corner kind of hanging out. Just push that down and out of the way for now. So it should look just like this. I just kind of eyeball it and make sure that center seam is as close to in the center as possible, but it doesn't have to be perfect. So now grab a ruler and we're going to measure a line that is 2.5 inches across. So it's going to go 2.5 inches all the way from the left all the way over to the right side. So I just move my ruler up and down until I have a good 2.5 inch distance between the front and the back. Try to keep your ruler perpendicular to that center seam. We want to keep this nice and straight, so I just use a tick mark usually to line that up. Now grab your fabric marker of choice and just trace along your ruler so you have a 2.5 inch mark on that corner of your bag. This line won't be seen in the end, so it doesn't really matter which type of tool you use. I like to add a couple clips here just to make sure that corner doesn't shift around while we're sewing. So now let's repeat that process for the other corner. So just flip your bag over, once again pushing the opposite corner out of the way, center your seam and measure your 2.5 inch line and mark it. Once again, just add a couple clips to keep it together. And now let's take this to the sewing machine and we're just going to sew along that 2.5-inch mark that we made. So your bag should now look like this with the right side out. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to trim down this bulky corner. So 1/4 inch away from the stitches you just sewed, cut off that bulky corner of your bag. Now we can turn the bag so that it's lining side out. Flatten out that box corner as best you can. And once again, we're going to repeat this process by making sure that seam runs centered down our panels. And once again, you can go ahead and push that opposite corner out of the way. And we're really just trying to get this center seam as flat as possible and as centered as possible. So once again, grab your ruler, and this time we're going to measure 4 inches across. So it should really be just outside that bulk of your seam. Use your fabric marker and once again, just draw along the ruler on that 4-inch line. I like to use clips here just to keep it in place before I get to my sewing machine. All right, so let's turn it over and do the same on the other side. Once again, drawing our 4-inch seam. If you feel like 4 inches is just not doable, you want to make it a little bit bigger, that's perfectly fine. Just be consistent on both sides of the bag. Don't have one box corner that's at 4 inches and another that's at 5 inches, because then you're going to have kind of a lopsided, wonky bag. Consistency is key here, no matter what size you choose. All right, our final stitches are just sewing along these drawn lines, and we're done.
All right, you guys ready to see the bag? This is the bag we made. These colors are so good. You can see I put my little logo right on that front pocket. Just pop that in right there. Open it up. Here we have our little hook right there. This is actually going to be a gift for someone, so I made this little, this is also by Crashing Waves. She just came out with it. I need to make a million more of these. I'm probably going to make a bunch and give them away or something because they're so stinking cute. But this is another hand sanitizer holder, and I'm just going to clip this on that little loop like that. Now we have the hand sanitizer holder in this little bag. Perfect for the little ones in your life on the go. Perfect for Easter egg hunts. This is also a really great size bag for those small errands you have to run. Maybe like going to Walgreens, grabbing some makeup. This is a great, great, great size bag. The firmness of the lining, it makes it able to do this, which is kind of crazy because there's no interfacing on the exterior or the lining of the bag. So that's really cool. Now don't forget, you can totally change the size of this bag. So here's another version of that same bag, but this bag, I did use the webbing. I used canvas on top, canvas on bottom, and quilt cotton on the inside, and you can see when I hold it, no, it's not going to stay upright like this bag. So it really just depends on the fabric you're using. If you want a bag that you can scrunch up, put in a ball, tuck in another bag, this is going to be a much better option. Don't use the waterproof canvas if this is the option you're going for. But if you want a more firm bag, you're going to want to use that waterproof canvas. You can see size difference in these bags. This bag I actually made about 2 inches shorter than this bag. So you can play around with the measurements. You can play around with add-ons. There's so much fun stuff you can do with these little bags. Like I said, if you haven't seen the original grocery tote video, I'll have a link for that down below. It is one of the first videos I made, so it's rough. Okay, that's all I can say about it is that it's rough. It's great information. A lot of people have made the bag based off that video, but I was still learning, so it's rough. We're working on making more enhanced versions of that bag with a little bit cleaner videos. So make sure you go check out the Pearl Soho website for the complete tutorial on their original design. I am so grateful that they put that out there. I have never seen anybody making a grocery tote this way. A lot of the comments on the previous videos that I've made have said the same thing. They've never seen something like this. These come together very quickly. They're very simple. There's no hardware. They're great grocery totes. They withstand a lot and they wash really well. Be prepared if you're going to make one of these. You're probably going to end up making a lot of them because the people in your life are going to demand it. So thank you so much for spending some time with me today going over these cute little grocery totes. I hope that this video inspires you to go out and make one. Don't forget that if you do make one, please post it on social media and include the hashtag OklaRootsToots. If you're not already in the OklaRoots Creatives Facebook group and you're interested in joining a sewing community full of people who will inspire you and encourage you and cheer for you, please consider joining our Facebook group. We have an amazing group of people at all skill levels, so if there is any question you have, trust me, there is somebody in that group who can answer it. I hope you have a great rest of the week. Get out there and make something. Bye!